What would you do if one of the best drivers of all time with more than 19 seasons behind him showed you that your car didn't work as you thought? That's exactly what happened to Ferrari in Qatar. But the most incredible thing is how they discovered it and what that means for the immediate future of the Scuderia. The disaster that Lewis Hamilton starred in during the sprint qualifying of the Qatar Grand Prix was not a simple bad day, nor was it a piloting error, a bad strategy, or a specific failure. It was a brutal demonstration of what happens when an elite driver comes across a deeply imperfect car and unintentionally exposes it to the world. Hamilton, in his first year with Ferrari, finished last in the table, something that had never happened in his almost 2 decades of career. And that anomaly, that completely out of the ordinary result, was the spark that set off the alarm in Maranello. Internally, this discovery caused a change in the dynamic between both pilots. Leclerc, for the first time since arriving at Ferrari, not only shares a garage with a legend, but now knows that this legend has the ability to read the car better than him. This not only generates competitive pressure, but also a redefinition of technical leadership within the team. Because if Hamilton is the one who identifies the problem, shouldn't he also be the one who leads its solution? And that is the real reason for Vasseur's confusion. Hamilton's arrival should not only be symbolic or motivational. His experience, his sensitivity, his knowledge were an invaluable technical resource. But no one at Ferrari expected that value to emerge so brutally, nor to reveal a problem that could cost the entire season. Now, Vasseur faces a double dilemma: how to rebuild his team's technical credibility and how to balance the internal forces between a Leclerc who represents the team's emotional future and a Hamilton who, in just 2 weekends, has already changed Ferrari's technical narrative. What happened in Qatar was not simply a technical wake-up call. It was a direct blow to the heart of Ferrari's internal confidence. What shocked the team members most was not seeing Hamilton finishing last, nor even discovering that the car had an erratic response. What devastated them was realizing that they had been developing a car for months that, in essence, was lying. The SF25, with all its aerodynamic advances and its refined balance in the wind tunnel, hit a factory defect that no internal process had been able to detect. And that, in a category where every millimeter counts, is an operational catastrophe. The technical impact was immediate. The engineering department, from vehicle dynamics specialists to those responsible for electronic integration, went into crisis mode. What until now was considered a reliable platform with predictable parameters on the track had shown to have emergent behaviors, anomalies that appeared only under very specific conditions, such as those Hamilton faced in sprint qualifying. This meant that the simulator tests and even Leclerc's references in previous weekends were not enough to detect the problem. The structure of the car behaved in a nonlinear manner. That is, in the face of repeated inputs, it did not guarantee constant outputs. That kind of instability is a silent poison in Formula 1. Worse yet, engineers discovered that many of the compensations they had made during training, such as small adjustments to the differential, torque maps, and suspension settings, were actually temporary fixes to misunderstood symptoms. What they thought was a question of driving style or adaptation to the asphalt turned out to be an original error. An incorrect interaction between the power steering, the torque distribution sensors, and the rear axle hydraulic system. And that failure, which had remained dormant, only woke up when a driver with surgical sensitivity like Hamilton took it to the limit. But beyond the technical chaos, the real earthquake was human. In a team where every employee, from the pit lane mechanic to the data analyst in Maranello, puts their pride in every part of the car, discovering that the final product had a fundamental flaw was devastating. The faces in the garage after the data analysis said it all. It wasn't frustration. It was disappointment. And in the midst of that emotional breakdown, Lewis Hamilton remained calm. There were no screams. There were no accusations. Just one phrase, repeated several times in private and then reported by team members: "This car is trying to tell us something and we're not listening." That position, more than any technical data, was what reconfigured the internal dynamics. Hamilton not only exposed the problem, he also showed how to deal with it. Since then, several engineers have begun to re-evaluate their approach to the data, now prioritizing pilot feel over the rigidity of predictive models. Charles Leclerc, for his part, has adopted a more analytical attitude, asking for constant comparisons with Hamilton's data to understand why the car responds differently with him. That small change is symptomatic. For the first time, Ferrari is listening to the driver before the algorithm. The SF25 has gone from being a car with championship aspirations to becoming a crisis laboratory. And although technical errors can be corrected with time, what cannot be easily recovered is trust. Vasseur knows it. Therefore, its biggest challenge now is not to find an aerodynamic or electronic solution, but to rebuild the internal certainty that Ferrari is still capable of building a championship car. And that will only be possible if they transform this technical humiliation into a source of structural learning. What happened in Qatar not only reconfigures Ferrari's present, redefines its entire roadmap for 2025. The revelation of the problem in the SF25 is not a simple technical alert. It is a turning point that will force the team to rethink its design philosophy, its internal validation processes, and especially the way in which it manages the integration between its drivers and the development of the car. From an engineering point of view, there is an immediate consequence. Ferrari cannot continue with the same evolutionary plan that it had projected for this season. Planned updates to the aerodynamic and suspension package scheduled for the European rounds are being urgently reviewed. Because if the problem of nonlinear behavior of the car arises from the interaction between multiple power steering systems, hydraulic system, torque sensors, and electronic balance, then any evolution without a base correction could even worsen the situation. This represents an enormous strategic dilemma. Partially redesigning a car in the middle of the season is not only expensive, but can involve penalties for exceeding the budget limits of the FIA financial regulations. Additionally, the token structure for certain key parts limits the freedom of structural changes, meaning Ferrari could be forced to live with the defect for much of the year. And this is where psychological pressure begins to play its role. The team will have to make decisions under a new paradigm. Bet everything on correcting the structural failure as soon as possible, even if that compromises immediate results? Or focus on mitigating its effects and adapting through piloting, accepting a lower than expected performance ceiling? This tension between radical technical solution and operational containment will mark Ferrari's course in the next Grand Prix. But beyond the technical, the implications on a human and political level within the team are even deeper. Hamilton has assumed, without being asked, the role of critical voice within the project. His authority, built on 7 titles and a career built on demanding excellence, has already begun to influence development decisions. His feedback has gone from being advisory to becoming a primary reference, even displacing Leclerc's historical sensations. This is not something minor. At Ferrari, where drivers have historically been symbols of identity rather than tools of development, this inversion of internal hierarchies can change the dynamics of the team completely. Leclerc, for his part, is facing the biggest challenge of his career within the Scuderia. For the first time, he must not only defend his position as an emotional leader, but demonstrate that he can match Hamilton in analytical ability and technical adaptability. The pressure is not only external from the media, from the tifosi, from the results, but internal. Now he has to prove that he can lead in the same dimension where Hamilton shines, that of deep technical understanding, and that can strengthen or fracture it. For Vasseur, the situation is even more complex. His leadership will be evaluated not by the victories he achieves this year that now seem more distant, but by the ability to reorganize a team in crisis without losing cohesion or direction. If it can transform this breaking point into an opportunity to revolutionize the internal structure, Ferrari could emerge stronger from this storm. But if it gives in to institutional inertia, the project could collapse under the weight of its own expectations. In the medium term, this also has implications for the 2026 season, when the new technical regulations will come into force. Ferrari cannot afford to misinterpret its current technical base, because any errors in this year's platform can be transferred to the model they are designing for that new era. Therefore, every decision they make now, every small adjustment, every track test, every driver-engineer feedback will have a domino effect that will be projected beyond this season. In short, what seemed like a bad classification has become a kind of broken mirror that reflects all of Ferrari's cracks, from the car's design to its internal decision-making structure. And although it is true that the year is long and the capacity for evolution in Formula One can be surprising, it is also true that time plays against it. Each race without a concrete solution to the problem will be one less race to fight for the title. And if Ferrari does not react with boldness and precision, 2025 could go from being the year of hope to the year of the great lost opportunity. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.